It's interesting when you talk about education, because what is the goal of education ultimately, right? It's to answer the big questions. Everything else is just, frippery, gingerbread around the edges. I've never used the word frippery in a speech. I apologize. It must be the jet lag. Frippery. You can look it up. It's a genuine word. But I guess the thing is that at the core of education must be, who am I? Where do we come from? Where are we going? What is the meaning of life? What does it mean to be a human being? Is there a God? Can we know whether there's a God? What can we know? Those are the only questions at the end of the day that anybody really cares about. Everything else comes from them. And so at places like Yale, they've long ceased to ask those questions because they dare not contemplate what their answers would be, right? And what I mean by this is that the standard view, the Christian view, the Judeo-Christian view, is that a loving God created us. Now, you can argue about the timing. Some people will say it happened, that the world was created at the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago. Other people say, no, you have to believe it happened 11,000 years ago. But the point is, it doesn't matter. God did it. You can argue about how and when, but God, the God of the Bible, did it intentionally to create you. And everything was unrolled to create you in his image, and he loves you and adores you and died for you, and he wants to be with you forever, and he has a plan for your life, and he wants to be involved with your life now and always, to lead you and guide you. Well, that's very different from the idea that we evolved by accident out of the primordial soup, utterly by accident. Because if that were true, if there's no God and we evolved by accident, it means that life genuinely has no meaning. Now, most people don't have the brain power to even begin to comprehend what that could mean. And the reason for that is that it's wrong. It's because we were created in God's image, and life has meaning, and trying to think about a world without meaning is like trying to think about a square circle. Don't even try. Some of you tried just now. I told you not to do that. I told you not to do that. You don't listen. So to think of a life without meaning is impossible, frankly, right? But that is the logical conclusion. If you're intellectually honest, and most people in the secular humanist liberal mindset are not intellectually honest because it's too painful to say, okay, if life has no meaning, there's no such thing as good or evil. They'll come up with some idea like, well, there's no good or evil. If we evolved out of the primordial soup by accident, mutations, everything is meaningless. That follows. And don't let people try to confuse you. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. It is that simple. So therefore, there's nothing transcendent. The love that you feel for your children, for your spouse, for your parents, that's just chemicals. There's nothing beautiful or transcendent about it. It's just chemicals designed to perpetuate the species for no particular reason. Now, who can live like that? The answer is absolutely no one. Because even those who think they believe it don't believe it. You can't believe it. So that's what the other worldview is. So if anybody says, what do you believe? Well, you believe that weird stuff? The weird stuff you believe is infinitely more reasonable. Infinitely more reasonable than that other way of thinking. That is a fact, what I just said. That is a fact. You need to know that. But the point is, we live in a culture, just as we're marinating in these sexual images, we're marinating in that worldview that says, you're crazy and there's no particular meaning, but we'll create these islands of meaning as though we ever could. If there's no God, and if God did not superintend our creation and is not with us, and if the basics of the biblical narrative are not true, then there is no meaning. Life is bleak. There's no reason to be here. Might makes right. It just becomes grotesque. So what do the institutions of higher learning do? They avoid these questions. They don't dare ask these questions because they know that where it leads is so bleak that they just say, we'll give you some skills. We'll teach you some languages, we'll teach you some science, we'll get you some this, but we won't ask those big questions that they used to ask, like, in the Middle Ages, before people knew right from wrong and science and stuff, that they used to ask those questions. Now we don't ask those questions because we sort of know there's no good answers. So we're just gonna give you some skills, and then you get some really, really good jobs and work really, really hard for a few decades, and then it'll all be over. Right? And on the weekends, there's sports and alcohol. You'll be fine. Just don't think about this stuff because it's very, very depressing.